This is a Dan Electro Hearsay? Maybe Heresy? I gotta remember what it what it is. I can't remember how it was spelled. Either way, this is one of those Dan Electro guitars that came out in like the late 90s-ish era when they were releasing all those like mini food named pedals. And this one has a built-in effect. There are two jacks. One's a bypass for normal. The other one is the effect, and it is activated by this little push button here. And it's a distortion with a resonance knob, like a cocked wah. In a previous video, I kind of went over what that is. And then also in another video, I replaced the single coils with Dan Electro style lipstick pickups because, yeah. So in one of those previous videos, I said I went over this the effect in this, and it's the same as the grilled cheese distortion effect that they made. It's that same kind of cocked wah distortion vibe. But it's on my bench today because, well, the trem arm, it's so hard to use the trem. So I'm gonna have to loosen those up, back it out. And also I wanna get this action in a little bit better. This action is a little high, and also the edges of the fretboard here are, I feel they need to be rolled a little bit more. And maybe we'll go over the frets and stuff. Also, it's been sitting on the wall for a while, and this guitar already had a little bit of rust on its selector shaft, and that oxidization has grown, and now it's like you really have to wiggle the knob, the switch, to make it click on and have connection. So we're just going to go over this thing and make it better. Also, I don't remember what strings I put on it, but it's going to get a set of 9s today. So let's get started. Okay, I'm gonna have to replace the trem block because it just crumbled on me. And yeah. Oh, look at that, it just crumbled in my hand. So gonna have to replace that trem block. Okay, I found a replacement block that I just put on. Here's what the difference between how the two look. This one is a little bit heavier, and the only other thing is that the trem arm I had in this one will no longer fit. But I had another one, and it fits. It fits so it sits. And also, this is kind of nice because it has more of the aged cream colored tip, which matches better with the rest of the plastics on this guitar. So, this thing's trashed. Now it's time to get this thing back reinstalled. You can see the color change behind here back when it was its original reddish color. It definitely faded. I have a feeling that this was in like a window or something, or in a room that didn't have any blinds because it faded. You see the backside is definitely more red. That is the original color. This faded to like a brown. It almost looks like a two-tone sunburst, which is kind of cool, but anyway, let's get this thing installed. Okay, so everything is now fixed or deoxified, and I rolled the fingerboard edges, polished up the frets, juiced up my fretboard, got it nice and oiled and polished. The tremolo springs have been loosened so that my trem floats a little bit. This is not a very good trem, but then again, this was like a super cheap guitar. This was like the Squire of Dan Electros. And we got the bridge block swapped out because the one broke. New trem arm. String height readjusted so that we have good action now. And then another thing I did was actually set the height of the pickups. I don't know what height lipstick pickups would sit at, but I just adjusted them to what Fender single coils would sit at, because this is very much a Strat guitar and it had Fender single coils before. So that's everything, I think. It's we're in the middle position. Feels a lot better to play now with the strings lower, so it was doing that weird, the ramp where as it got towards the bridge, it started sloping. Okay, well, there we have it. That's the Dan Electro. Just needed to get it back in a little bit more playable condition. The strings are still stretching, so every time I use the tremolo, it pulls, the strings are stretching, they go out of tune. And then also, as the strings are stretching and becoming more slack, the springs were like overpowering them as the strings were weakening, so the tremolo was getting closer to the body, and so it kept decking, and I had to keep tuning up, and it kept decking, and I had to keep tuning up. So I've got it nicely balanced now, and playing the strings and stretching them out and stuff was getting everything kind of settled in. I would say that this guitar is a fun one as a collectible. As a collectible that, of a part of Dan Electro's history, and especially like a big part of mine, because it was like the introductory period of Dan Electro for me, was those little mini pedals and that whole like 90s, late 90s, early 2000s boom of Dan Electro stuff coming out again. That was my introduction, and I loved it because it was all retro. So this is a cool little piece of history just for fun. It was meant as a beginner's guitar, but I think you could possibly gig with this if you if you only used it for like a song, where it was, yeah, and you could even use your little built-in distortion. The distortion goes down with the, it cleans up with the volume knob, and then you have the cool resonance effect on it, so you can get your cocked wah sound. But it goes out of tune too easy. Maybe that was just this new string stretching and the springs and all that, balancing back and forth. But because there's nothing else. Everything else is, the what am I trying to say here? The only thing that could cause it going out of tune is string stretching and the use of the tremolo. Everything else is locked in really good and nice. So it's just the tremolo use that would bring you out of tune, and probably playing really hard. If you played really hard, it'd definitely bring you out of tune, like any other guitar. But I think it'd be cool to use it, like if I had a surf band, and I would use it for a song for sure, and just try to find a use for that distortion on the body. I'd use it for like a one song in a surf set, just for the sake of weird, funky aesthetic. Another thing I love these cast tuners, the Dan Electro tuners. They're not good tuners by any means, but it's just the whole aesthetic thing. That's cool. Well, we got her fixed up. And honestly, I think I need to straighten the neck out, pull the neck back a little bit. The problem with this is there's no truss rod adjustment up there, which means it's vintage style. It's in the neck. So in order for me to do that, I gotta take the neck off, and I just don't want to do that right now. I'll do it later.